Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Steel and Whiskey. I'm your host, David Zabka, and I have a special guest with me here today. I feel like I keep saying they're all special. I really do mean it. I enjoy all my guests. So we've got Josh Hawley with us here today. Josh is our technical consultant. Is that your correct
I
title?
believe it's senior technical consultant.
Senior technical consultant with SDS2's. So believe it or not, Josh slid into the previous role that I had here with SDS2. So him and I kind of have a lot in common. As you can tell, you can see, you can hear. Well, for those of you watching, you can see. So both bald, if nobody gets it. Yeah. So anyway, first things first on Steel and Whiskey, we've got to pour a drink here, figure out what we're drinking, and then I'm going to let Josh. I'm going to let you give everybody a little intro to yourself. So
That's good.
So good story. Well, I don't know if it's a good story on this bottle or not. I was at the local liquor store. Everybody's heard me talk about the Still because that's where I go a lot, right? So good selection. Talk to the people there. Get good recommendations and such. So this bottle I have today is purely based on the fact that it was in the clearance shopping cart that they sit out in the aisles at the Still. So it's a $120 bottle, but it was $30 off. So I thought, well, it's got to be good if it's a $120 bottle, right? That's stealing it. $30 off, right? So here we are. It's got a green label on it. Josh and I made sure to look up how to pronounce this and what that word actually was on there. So we didn't want to sound like fools on the podcast here. So it was Weto. And the definition of that, or the meaning of that, was any person with fair hair and skin, right? And skin, I would say, is accurate. I don't know, a hair, bald joke again, right? So I'm pretty intrigued by this bottle here. So it's aged 6 years. It's a rye whiskey, made out in California, Vallejo, and it says it is finished in cognac barrels. So I think it's gonna have. It's got a
really good find.
Got a nice little glass. The smell.
Oh, that's nice.
Smells nice. I'll even let you pour yours first, Josh.
I appreciate it.
Gotta be nice to the guest, right?
Very special guest.
He's going with a tall pour.
There's a lot of ice in that glass.
This smells really good.
It does smell good.
I'm pretty excited now. But it's funny because when I did buy this, I started asking the employees at the liquor store, what's the story on this? Why is it on sale? Is nobody buying it because it's bad or what? And they all kind of looked at me like they didn't even know it was in their store almost. So none of them knew anything about it. So
maybe you can go back and tell them something about it after this, huh?
Hopefully it's all good things. Maybe I didn't bring a backup bottle. So
That's gonna be what it is.
All right. Cheers, Josh.
It's not bad.
Yeah,
I like that.
it's a little different.
It is. I feel like you get that almost the cognac finish in there. There's a
Yeah.
little bit of a different taste on the finish of that.
There is, for sure. I would say it's different than any other rye whiskey I've ever had. So it's definitely it's good. Yeah, very good. Okay, you know what? It was a good find.
Nice try. Nice
Very
job.
good. Yeah. So long time to introduce our drinks here and our whiskey, right? But it's a big part of the show. So Josh, tell us about yourself. Who are you? Where you been? How'd you get here?
Yeah.
All the things.
I started detailing. So, I mean, if we go way back, I was a joist detailer years ago. I started as an internship with an internship in high school, detailing for the local joist manufacturer out in Nevada.
Nevada.
I went to high school in Nevada.
Okay. Is that were you born in Nevada?
So I was a military kid. I was born in Arkansas.
Okay.
I grew up all over the West Coast. I moved a little bit everywhere. And my dad retired from the Navy in Nevada, small town about an hour east of Reno in the middle of the desert.
Okay.
Fun fact, if anybody's seen the movie Top Gun, all of the fighter school that was at Top Gun actually moved out to Fallon, Nevada because of the open airspace. So
Okay.
spent a lot of my childhood around airplanes and such.
Interesting. Very cool. Very cool. Okay.
Kind of bounced around a little bit after that. Ended up in Nebraska. Took my first steel detailing job with Arrowhead Steel Fabricators out of Grand Island.
Mhm.
Detailed for them for about 14 and a half years. Went out as a subcontract detailer. Detailed on my own for about 2.5 years, roughly. And came on staff here about 15 months ago. So,
Okay.
in between that, I taught at the college level. I didn't just detail, I've checked, I project managed. So kind of been around all aspects of the industry for a while.
Mhm. So let's dig. Can we dig a little deeper into some of those?
Dig in.
Okay, very good. I won't go personal. So so started joist detailer.
Yeah.
What did you, was it just AutoCAD?
It was. So back when I was in high school, I took drafting classes all through high school, and the opportunity came up out there to draw for them. It was just AutoCAD. They had a special program at the time. I can't remember the exact name. It was like JD2 or something like that. And it was really at the beginning of when you were introducing scripts, right? So if you think back to AutoCAD and you draw in a wall and it was one line, well, they had a Lisp that you'd put in.
This old Lisp routine, right? Yeah.
And put it in 2 lines at a time, right? So it cut the drawing curve by half.
Yeah.
On
That's a big deal.
It was a big deal back then. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's what. So it was like probably like their own custom scripts that were just like written in AutoCAD, based probably on AutoCAD Lisp routines. Okay.
Yep.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So how long did you do that?
So I think I was a junior in high school when I started the internship.
You started in high school.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. And I drew for the last year of high school for them, part-time and then into full-time. And then I detailed for them for a year after high school.
Mhm.
And I ended up making some moves in between there. But I actually worked for a second joist manufacturer in Nevada as well after high school. So I have a total, I think I had 4 years of joist and deck detailing.
Okay. Very good. Very good. And then, next move was to Grand Island, to Chief, right? Or Arrowhead.
Yeah, there was a few stops in between there, but detailing wise, yep, it was in Grand Island.
So I'm always very confused. I think it's just the different divisions within Chief itself, right?
Yeah.
So they've got like Arrowhead, and then there's Chief Buildings, and then each one's kind of a different specialty, different division. Is that right?
Absolutely. So Chief's a very diversified company. Arrowhead Steel is a small portion of Chief Buildings. So it's a steel fabrication company embedded inside of a metal building company.
Okay.
And then obviously Chief has other operations as well, a rail car division and lots of parts and things that are made for like John Deere, things like that. So very diversified company.
Okay. But you were inside of there. You were Arrowhead is the kind of the structural steel division, right? Yep. Okay. And you detailed for them for a lot of years, right? How long were you there?
I think it was just about 14 and a half years. Yeah.
Very good. Did you AutoCAD, SDS2 the whole time? Was it a mix? What?
I started out on AutoCAD, and it was, I think it was my first year or just after my first year. Mm-hmm. And they sent me to basic training back in the Circle Building. Can't remember the exact address of that, but the Circle Building over on.
Oh yeah, okay. That would have been the building we were at before we moved to where we're at now. Yeah. So yeah, that's the building I started working for SDS2.
And they, I went down for training and I came back and they said, learn everything you can. And that was when I stopped detailing AutoCAD and started detailing SDS2. So.
And do you remember? Long time ago, obviously, so it's probably difficult to remember the details, but like what was that like? What was the learning? Remember 14 plus years, probably
it's almost 17, 18 years ago.
18, yeah, close to 20 years ago. So How'd you do? What was the learning curve like?
It was different.
Yeah.
It was back when we were hand drawing staircases, for example. And I remember when I came on staff, there's a kind of a natural progression to learning detailing, right? And everybody does it a little bit differently, but you typically don't start on stairs, and that's where they started me. And so I learned how to use my jobber and calc the math backward and find the triangles. And it was a lot of different color pens and drawing some extra lines in to try and find that. But I actually got pretty good at stair and rail, and I think I was 6 months in, and uh, somebody at the company had just started using SDS2, and they had a pretty sizable job. It had like 400 detail sheets, and they gave it to me. They said, "Go through these and mark up everything that's wrong." And I gave back a clean stack of 400 sheets, and they said, "You didn't mark anything up." I said, "I don't even know what I'm looking for, man. I don't know how to detail a beam." So you give me a 12-story stair, I was okay. Couldn't detail a W8 by 10 to save my life. So
That's funny. So
it was a little backward for me.
it is very backwards from the typical detailer getting started story, right?
Very much so.
Usually not always, obviously, but the typical detailer story is like, oh yeah, they made me clean up drawings for like a year. I was just sitting there, scrubbing, and then they let me do some basic stuff, and then I proved I was good at the basic stuff, and then they let me do some sloping stuff, and then I could do a stair or two, right? You just completely flipped it
back. Oh yeah. I think I started out and I did anchor rod plans for a few weeks, and then I went straight into stair towers. So to this day, I love detailing stairs. I think it's so much more fun than detailing iron. So a lot of people would disagree with that, but
Yes, they would.
I love it.
Yeah,
So,
that's good. That's
Yeah.
fun. You know what? I learned something new about Josh
There you
today. I didn't know that. That's good. Funny. Um, so, and you were doing all that the stairs and rails you were doing by hand still, right?
yeah. So in the beginning, obviously in AutoCAD, it was all by hand. You could have templates, right? And because we'd shortcut things. You could have some that showed 7 risers, and you'd say 9 risers at, and it didn't really have to be 100% accurate. But all of those rails, especially when you got into specialty rails, like a welded wire mesh or something like that, that you didn't really have a standard detail on. There was a lot of meticulousness when you're trying to make sure your lines aren't overlapping, and then calculating that math correctly, and trying to learn to work from floor to floor and not to the pan or to the nosing line or whatever. So big strong learning curve, but I think I'm a better detailer, or I was, at least when I was detailing, a better detailer for it.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. So, and then you worked on after Arrowhead. I think you started as a detailer there, but you worked your way up there a little bit. And did you manage some detailing in that department?
I did
as well.
Yeah, I did. So like I said, I detailed, I checked, I project managed, and when I left Arrowhead, I was the detailing supervisor running the department.
Okay, very good. So I guess I'm just trying to build Josh up.
No.
I know that he's got some good experience. He's a good guy, very intelligent fellow. So, and then you detailed on your own a little bit.
I did. I subcontracted, and I worked with KMA Steel.
Okay.
And they service obviously a lot of different clients, and that even went to just the breadth of my detailing, right? I mean, it's one thing to work for a fabricator who does things the same all the time, and you get into that routine. And then you go work for somebody else or for several different fabricators, and they'll do things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And you see how other detailers are maybe how their drawings look or what blocks they've created to bring in. And it broadens out your horizons as to, what you may have thought was wrong. Like there was one way to do it. Well, there's not. There's lots of ways to do it. And it helps open your mind. So yeah, great group of guys, KMA Steel, and I learned a lot from them as well.
Yeah, very good, very good. So I talked to another detailer here who talked to him recently. He had worked for a fabricator for like 10 plus years, right? And then similar path as you, branched out, went to work for a subcontract detailer, and they had 20 fabricators they were trying to satisfy. And he was telling me about, what a shock to the system it was for him for the same reasons you just described. When he was working for the fabricator, this is the way we do it. One way, you don't do anything differently, and that's all you do. That's all you know. So when you do that for 10 years, and then you go now, all of a sudden you've got, honestly, those 20 fabricators they're trying to satisfy, they probably got 20 different ways to do it. They probably have 24 different ways of doing things, if we're being honest. So, yeah, it was like for him too, it was a shock to the system. It was like he couldn't believe that things were done differently than what they were at the fabricator he had worked for so long. So,
and what you learn, I think, too, is that, I mean, there's been plenty of things I've looked at and I'm like, this is silly. Why are we doing this? But everybody's running different softwares. And, you know, some of those softwares may be mainstream stuff that we're used to. Some of them may be just a homebrew thing they've been running for 50 years, and it has to go in a certain way. And even the way they've trained their shop personnel to need this particular dimension on a rail, but these people don't. It doesn't really matter if you think it's silly or not. You got to do it, but you start to gain a perspective and an appreciation just for how people do business and how they do it differently, and we can learn from each other. So
absolutely, yeah. I for me, in conversations with a lot of fabricators, and that it usually it boils down to, well, that's what our shop guys know, and so we have to, you know, we can't go retrain our shop guys, because that's going to cost us a lot of time. That's going to cost us a lot of money to retrain them, because if they're training them, they have downtime, right? And that equals loss in money. So, yeah, it's always fun, interesting to have those conversations.
A lot cheaper to change the detailing process than to retrain the shop.
Right. Yeah. And then, of course, now it's not just about the shop personnel; it's about the shop equipment. And okay, how does what does the capabilities of the shop equipment have? And then we've got to do things slightly different based on the shop equipment, or like, can the equipment do it more efficiently than we did before in the past manually, which we're seeing that a lot now with all the technology, different laser cutting machines and small machines that are now fabbing a lot of the handrail and miscellaneous type of stuff. People are coming up with really clever ways to take advantage of those machines and make the fabbing process much more efficient.
Right.
But what that means is, it means the detailer has to adapt to the equipment and the technology the same way also, and that's not always so easy.
There's one constant, I feel like, in the steel detailing industry, and it's going to change, right? And the person who's going to do the change is going to be the detailer. It's nobody else.
I wouldn't say that. Everybody else is changing too.
I'd say the detailer's changing first, and they're changing the most often. Whether that's the people on site for what they need, the erector needs, the shop needs. But again, it's easiest to change.
The problem is everybody's changing, and they're dictating the change to the detailer. So everybody's changing. It may feel like the detailer is the only one changing, but that's not true. Everybody else is changing. The detailer is just the last to know that something changed, and somebody needs them to change now. Whereas the fabricator and the erector, in this case, probably others as well, but like, they were able to think their process out, right? They all got in a room and talked and figured out how they were going to change, and they were going to make it better for their processes, and their company was going to be so much more efficient. But what they didn't do was include the detailer in there so that he knew that, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I got this job and I got to do it differently than I ever have. So
yeah, that's probably a better way to put it.
I feel for you. I get it, but it's always, they just didn't communicate to the detailer until the last minute that they needed to change. So we're all changing. Detailer's just the last to know usually, right?
That's probably a better way to put it.
Yeah. So not making excuses for anybody out there. I feel for everybody, but yeah. And hey, nobody's alone. We go through change here all the time at SDS2. It's a ever evolving thing. So not just changes in our software, but changes in our processes internally too. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. You've probably seen that in a very short period of time that you've worked with us. So, yeah. So, and it's, usually all for the better. everybody's always got good intentions behind the changes. Nobody's ever changing to like, hey, I'm going to stick it to this detailer. That's never their reason for changing, right?
There's always growing pains, but
Yeah.
When you look at the long game, it's going to be for the benefit.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me, so we talked about your detailing past, detailing history a little bit, how you got to where you're at today. Well, we skipped a couple things. So you said you did a little teaching.
I did teach, yep. Central Community College in Grand Island
Okay.
has a great drafting program. And I was asked to come on staff and teach adjunct at night. So I taught 4 hours a night, twice a week for probably about 3 years.
Okay.
I was teaching a lot of different softwares. So that program was set up to where you could take all the courses kind of at your own pace, right? So there may be 12 people in the classroom, but they're all at different levels of their degree.
Mm-hmm.
And so I, of course, taught SDS2, but I taught AutoCAD, I taught Revit, I taught SolidWorks, I taught Inventor, I taught blueprint reading, welding for manufacturing. I think I taught somewhere around 20 different courses, depending on which student took which class at the time.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, you're slowly becoming like the most interesting man in SDS2.
I'm not getting into my childhood. It's gonna.
You know what? Oh, so I got to make sure. So the title of this episode, Josh Hawley, the most interesting man at SDS2. I just got to throw that out there for our marketing team right now.
I'm so glad I got a fresh haircut before I came in here.
Oh, that's funny.
That is funny.
So, well, to make it even more interesting, you have another role outside of SDS2 now that I find very interesting, and it's perception is a funny thing, because before I got to know you as well as I know now, I would have never guessed that you were a person that would do something like this. So you're part of the school board, local school board also, right?
Yeah, I'm a local school board member in Grand Island. Yeah.
So you know what, if anybody has a chance to sit with Josh and talk about some of the crazy stuff he deals with at the local school board, I encourage you to do so.
And I'd say too, since we're sitting here talking about it, anybody who wants to be an advocate for change in your school district, I'd certainly encourage you to run. The reason I ran, honestly, is nobody was running. I was involved with the school. They asked me to sit in on several committees. And I think, it's one of those deals that when the school would call, because my children inevitably do things like other kids, they do things wrong sometimes. I'd show up and we'd have conversations. And the next thing you know, I was on like 4 different committees at the school. And they said, you want to run for school board? And I asked them, I said, can I get off some of these other committees? Because I'm starting to lose some time. But I've learned so much about education and what our teachers and our administrators do to make education successful for our children. So yeah, I would encourage anybody, if you want to get active, the school board is a great place to serve. And you will learn more than you ever thought about education. So
I have no doubt.
Mhm.
I have no doubt. Yeah. So it's I guess it's just interesting. Your perception is a funny thing. I never thought that you would be the guy that is on a school board.
Yeah.
But you know what? Good for you. Thank you. Shaping the world's future here.
I think I don't know if I ever told you a story about perception. So I was at the school board conference in San Diego a couple years ago,
Mhm.
and it was the school board, and we're out walking around the town, and we asked somebody to take a photo of us on the steps. And one of the school board members sent it to his wife, and she said, "It's a great photo." She said, "Well, who's the random biker?" She didn't expect me to be on the school board either. So perception's a funny thing.
It is. Yeah. So you've been with SDS2 here for about probably a year and a half.
15 months.
15 months. Okay, so coming up on a year and a half.
Actually, it's 15 months yesterday, I think. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Very cool. So is it going good so far? You lasted past a year, so can't be
Can't be that bad.
Can't be that bad.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's I've known a lot of you. I mean, we've known each other, 18 years.
Yeah,
I think
probably nearly as long as I've worked here. So yeah.
And that's how it is with a lot of the folks. I've known a lot of our sales guys that long, and I think it's interesting to see how much I don't know, to be honest, right? I know a lot, I really do, but then I'll run into things that I'm like, what is this? And even I'm contacting support and they're teaching me things. So all the skills that I developed and used while I was in the industry, there's plenty of things that I didn't know behind the scenes. And we start looking at our staff and the different roles that they play and how they're all experts in their own right. They may have never detailed, but they'll run circles around me on setup or problem solving and things like that. So it's been a great experience so far and an eye-opening experience at the same time.
And I would say we've got a good mix now on staff, especially of people who have detailed, people who have detailed at a subcontract detailer, people who have detailed strictly for fabricators and that. So we've really got a really good mix on staff of, that experience, that industry experience from a number of different areas. But then we've got people also that just have never sat in the chair room. I'm one of those people, right? I came straight out of college and worked for SDS2 in the support department. And I pretty much learned everything that I know now by working here. And I was probably a pain in the butt for a lot of people in support when they would call, and I was just a young and didn't know anything, and I would always just say like, well, why do you want to do that?
You've asked me that a few times.
And they would probably sit there and like grumble at me for a little bit, and then they would explain it and I'd go, oh, I understand now. Here, yeah, you got to go over here and you got to do this and you got to do that, and voila, you're done, right? So I really was able to pick up the software really quickly, and then from talking to our customers and asking them a lot of questions, and I, all the guys that suffered through that with me, I appreciate sharing the knowledge and all that good stuff. So but yeah, just asking like, why are you doing that, or what's the end goal, or whatever. I learned so much from that. And then in a sales role that I played for a while, being able to visit the shops and be in it and at NASCC and all that, is you really learn just a lot from talking to people.
You do.
And there's my stepdad, when I was growing up, my stepdad always had, he had a lot of sayings, but one that always sticks with me is he always said, it's not what you know, it's who you know. I never, as a younger person, never even thought about that really, or what it means or why that's relevant. But today I get it as an adult, having to talk to a lot of people on a regular basis. I get it now. It's not just knowledge sharing, but it's like, hey, I know this guy who could do a thing, or who would help me out, or whatever. It's very much about who you know. There's a lot of what you know in there also, but
there is, but
who you know is very, very important.
Well, I'd say, you and I've had plenty of conversations since I've been here, right? And you've asked me that question many times. Why would you do it this way? And even in other conversations I've had here, my detailing experience is mostly in the Midwest. And, whether it comes down to how our tools work in the software, or, what's coming up the pipeline, I'm like, well, this is the way you do it. But that's not necessarily the case. Just from working as a subcontractor, talking to people here, there are people that do things differently than I've always done. And so, it's just getting that breadth of knowledge. Especially in this position, doing the demos every week. I see so many different ways of doing things that I would have never thought of, and some of them are really great ideas that I wish I had back when I was a detailer. So, but you learn a lot. You learn a lot doing this job.
Yeah, and so we talked earlier about how when you went from fabricator doing it one way for so long, and then you went to a subcontract detailer. And now there was, say, 15 different ways of doing it, right? However many fabricators you were working for, they were probably all doing things slightly different. And then you come to work for SDS2, And there's all these fabricators in the US and all of them across the world and you know, Brazil to Argentina to Germany to Australia, you name it.
Oh yeah.
So you can imagine then, you've seen it, but for the audience, you can imagine going from 20 subcontract or 20 fabricators to trying to satisfy everyone across the world. People do things a little differently, and it's a difficult thing to do. So
there are, you know, different preferred connections by region.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, metric has been difficult for me at times, right? Doing jobs in metric and then obviously in imperial. And you're right. I mean, there's always something that's changing.
Yeah.
But it's fun to be a part of that,
Mhm.
right? Like, again, we do things a certain way here, but with the vision of SDS2 and where that's going, and learning about different markets and what their needs are, what their preferred connections are.
Mhm.
Again, it's super interesting and it's really fun to be a part of.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So we probably didn't really talk about what a senior technical consultant does. What is your day-to-day look like as in that position for us? Like what do you do?
Yeah, so
I know what you do, but
you do know what I do.
tell the audience what you do.
I affectionately refer to myself as the demo guy, even though I do way more than that.
You're so
But
much more than
I'm the demo guy. So
give yourself more
I
credit.
appreciate that. So when our sales team gets in contact with potential customers who want to see SDS2, they set up the meetings and make all the introductions, and then I get the privilege of showing them what SDS2 can do, how it can solve their problems, and what solutions we bring to the table. And then our salesmen go back and close the deal. So I do feel like I have the best job in the company. I get to showcase all the great features that David and his team come up with and implement. Aside from that, I travel with you guys. Whether it's the NASCC or FabTech, obviously our SDS2 Summit, I'm present at all of those shows. I go on the road with our sales team and visit customers and try and help solve problems there. I'm in charge of, well, I'm not in charge of, Laura is in charge of, kind of set up the webinars, but I do all the webinars now each month on either different new features or just trying to put out something for people that might be looking into switching to SDS2 from their current solution. And then, aside from that, a lot of meetings, but that's, I mean, there's the crux of what I do every day.
Okay, very good, very good. And having sat in your chair, it sounds simple when you just describe it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, ooh, big deal. So what, right? But when you get the number of people coming to you saying, "Hey, can we do this? Hey, can we do that?" It's not one of them is, I shouldn't say not one of them. Most of them are very different.
Yes.
Right. So it's always, you're constantly having to figure out like, okay, yeah, we can do this. I just have to adapt this to this person's special application of whatever it is they're building, right? It's not just structural steel. It's so much more than just structural steel. There is structural is a small part of it. There's a lot of stuff. It's built out of the same shapes in that, but
Sure.
I would say a lot of the customers coming to us anymore they're not strictly just structural customers, right?
I remember, when I first came on staff and you were training me up, and it was probably my first demo. And you have confidence, right? I've used the software, I know how to use it, but there's a difference. It's just like presenting at User Group or Summit, right? You're standing in front of people and they expect you to know the answers. And when I was first doing my first demo, I'm sure I butchered it. I'm sure it was not the best thing that's ever been shown. And you have to learn that comfort piece of being in front of the people and having the answers. And then if you don't have the answer, obviously honesty, but you're trying to think on the fly.
Yep.
Can we do this? Because there's a ton of menus inside of SDS2. You're trying to think on the fly as to what do I need to make this change in the settings, or can we actually do this? And so there's a lot of that. And again, the longer I'm here, the more I learn about things I didn't even know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not as easy as you think, but it gets easier each time I do one.
Yeah.
So
This reminds me that that little story there reminds me of another story. And I want to tell, but I got to get your permission first to tell the story about the cutouts around columns. Is that okay?
Go for it.
Okay. And there's a number of reasons why I want to tell the story.
Oh, I'll tell you about the leveling plates after that. You remember that conversation?
Oh. Well, let me do my story first.
Go for it.
Okay. I'm gonna have to pour another glass of this stuff. It's pretty good, right?
It
You're
is.
gonna have to get a hotel room here.
I might.
To stay. You can crash on my couch. It's fine.
Appreciate it.
So talking about just like the different things, and I throughout the years talking a lot of conversations with all sorts of detailers and fabricators and whatever. And I've experienced this not just with you, but with several people who have come to SDS2 from the industry, and just learning, right? So as a detailer, a lot of times you just get in that production mindset, right? Like, you know what you know you have deadlines, you've got to get this stuff out. So you just get in a groove and you do what you know how to do. And it's always, well, I'm too busy. I ain't got time to learn this new stuff, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So Josh said I could tell this story. So Josh was putting together doing a model, kind of a demo model type of deal. And I think it was with floor plates or grading floor plates, very similar. But he was going through, and I think you were using the void component, or maybe doing a cut layout.
I was doing voids.
So you're doing a void component, which requires you to do the full layout, right? So he's having to pick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clicks and make sure he sets the radius on the corners cut out around the column correctly. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know he was doing that. It just so happened, like, I came over to Josh's office to have a conversation, and I saw him doing this, and I just, what are you doing there, Josh? I see you doing all these cutouts around the column. What are you doing? And he looked at me like, I think you looked at me quite seriously and said, well, I'm doing the cutouts around the columns. And I said, why are you using that? And I recall you saying, well, because there's nothing that gives me the block out. There's only a command that gives me the exact profile of the
fit exacts.
Am I telling this accurate?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I'm accurate so far. And I said, no, that's not true. You can use fit cope, and it does around the full shape. So you get your square, basically your square cut out with the rounded corners, right? And I'm not going to repeat exactly what he said because it's not family friendly, but it was something to the effect of, are you kidding me? I've been doing this for 15 years and I could have been doing it this other way much faster. So I always think it's funny to have conversations with a guy like you who has sat in the chair for so long. And it makes me wonder, like, how many people out there are just saying, I don't have time to learn. And then what's the inefficiency?
Wow.
And how much more efficient could people be if they just took the time to learn? So you may think you don't have the time to learn, but by learning just a little bit more, you're going to gain more time. You're going to be more efficient. You're going to gain time here or there or whatever. So.
Well, and I mean, it could prove that, or it could just prove I'm an idiot. I mean, one of the other. I think, and early on in my career, I prided myself on making sure I read release notes and knew the new features. And I think it's to your point, right? I mean, deadlines continue to get tighter. Drawings continue to get more complex in designs. And we're always just under the gun, and there's no excuse for not knowing. And and this goes back to the leveling plate story. So when I first came on staff, you're like, all right, if there was one tool that you could have in SDS2.
Okay, I remember that. Keep going. I remember now.
What would it be? And I said, I feel like on all these jobs I'm working on, everybody wants these darn leveling plates, like the set template, ink rod setting templates, and He goes, well, why don't you just go look in the components? And sure enough, there was a leveling plate component, probably been there for 2 years, and I didn't know about it. And so read your release notes and check out the new feature videos and make sure you stay on top of it, because we get stuck. We get stuck in, like you said, what we know, what we have to accomplish, and the fastest way that we know how to do it.
Yeah.
And there's new stuff coming out all the time, and we don't. I didn't, as a detailer, necessarily catch it all, and it can cost you.
And I would say moral of that story is I provided Josh Hawley with the one thing he wanted in the software, so my job is done, complete, and
I think the moral of that story is if you call David, you tell him the one thing you want in the software.
Don't make promises. Don't make promises you can't keep. No, that's not good.
I'm not in charge of keeping them. That's your job. I'm just the demo guy.
Yeah. You're not supposed to make my life hard.
I'm gonna get you more views. What are you talking about?
Hey, yeah, just go viral, right? Yeah. So that's funny. So I could tell a number of stories like that. Like Nate, there's numerous things I've had conversations with Nate about too, because he was just he worked at a fabricator for a number of years, and he knew what he knew because that's how they taught him at the fabricator, but he never had any exposure outside of that fabricator, that experience, really to know any different. That's what they taught him. That's what they told him to do. So that's what he did. And
absolutely,
he didn't really have time, or didn't take the time to go find more efficient ways. Right. So,
I mean, you think about just the way we do, we talk about handrails, right? I mean, you think back 15 years ago when we were doing handrails, just the old school way, put in a pipe, and then you put in a pipe, and you put in a pipe, and you put in a pipe. Yeah. And then we came out with the handrails, and I was resistant to that change too, right? Yeah. I'm faster the old way, but when you start exploring, just test things out and try them, you're going to find things in the software that you didn't know, and you didn't know would make you faster.
And at the very beginning, sure, you can probably make that argument because you're leery. You don't know, like your muscle memory has to kind of go away a little bit or whatever. So sure, yes, I certainly understand there's a learning curve to everything, but we have to be willing to jump in and work through the learning curve, I guess, and typically on the back side of that learning curve, man, that's when you shoot out and your productivity really increases, right? So,
well, and that's what we're asking our potential clients to do too, right? I mean, people who are coming from competing softwares with us, they ask the same question in just about every demo. What's the learning curve to this? And we tell them you're going to be a little bit slower in the beginning. Yeah, but as you start doing this, the software is going to make you faster. It's just you got to go through those growing pains to get where you want to go.
Yeah, always growing pains for sure, no doubt. But not just with SDS2. It applies to any software, anything in life that you do differently.
Absolutely,
there's going to be differences, right? So, well, Josh, I don't know. I'm getting pretty low here. I don't know if we need to do a second class. It's pretty good, but I'm not sure we need to do a second class. It's pretty strong too.
It is.
I think it's
got a good finish to it. I like it.
It's 100 proof, so.
You can just leave this one in my office. It'll be fine. I'll take care of
it. No. I usually plant the ones that I don't like out in the break room here, where everybody hangs out on Friday afternoons. Only Friday afternoons,
right?
Only Friday afternoons, right? Yep. And kind of let them have it. It usually goes away pretty quick, but I think I'll hide this one in my office and keep it to my own stash. Yeah. All right. Well. I don't know. Any parting words of wisdom you would like to share, Josh?
Wisdom. I don't know, but I would say though is I appreciate everybody here at the company. I feel like everybody's so, unless you're forward facing all the time, you're behind the scenes, and everybody here is so knowledgeable. I've learned from them, and I continue to learn from everybody, and I appreciate that. So. And then, read your release notes, or go check, not release notes, but go check out the new features.
You know what? Release notes are pretty boring. So
read the release notes.
There are a lot of, probably a lot of small, tiny hidden nuggets in there. But I have to review the release notes now, so I can understand and relate to those people who think it's not very fun or exciting to read release notes. I agree with you. Got to do it. But we have webinars, we do
Yes.
videos, we send out regular emails. You know what? There's a big screen on your home screen,
yeah.
big box on your home screen that we put out updates on. So make sure you're paying attention to that stuff. If you're not getting toolbox updates, go to our toolbox page. Make sure you subscribe to those emails. If you feel like you're not seeing stuff from SDS2, call somebody, let them know, like go to our webpage, subscribe to the thing on there. To make sure you're getting all our emails, all our updates. So that was my quick sales pitch to try to get everybody going. But yeah, this is
It's been fun.
I always appreciate the conversation with you, Josh. Thanks for coming on. I'm sure the first time you've been on here, but maybe we'll have to do it again in 6 months or a year to see where you're sitting at then.
That sounds good, man.
Okay. Well, hey, everybody. Josh Hawley, most interesting man at SDS2. And you know what? Come back for the next episode of Steel and Whiskey.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Brother.